A struggling father shares a sandwich with a sad little girl on the street. Not knowing her powerful CEO mother is watching from behind, about to change everything. Daniel hadn't eaten in 2 days. His hands were shaking as he unwrapped the gas station sandwich, the only thing 5 crumpled dollars could buy after paying for his daughter's fever medicine. It wasn't much. White bread, processed cheese, some mystery meat that had seen better days. But it was food, and food was survival. He sat on the concrete steps outside the downtown office building, where he'd just been rejected for a janitorial position, his 10th rejection this month. The security guard had barely looked at his resume before shaking his head. "We need someone with experience," he'd said, as if Daniel's desperation wasn't experience enough. His daughter Keisha was home with his elderly neighbor Mrs. Patterson, probably wondering when Daddy would bring dinner. She'd asked for chicken nuggets yesterday. Daniel had promised. That promise now felt like a knife twisting in his gut. The weight of failure crushed him more than hunger ever could. That's when he heard it. Soft crying. Muffled. Like someone trying to hide their pain but failing. He looked up. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, sat 3 steps above him. Designer shoes with little jewels on them. A jacket that probably cost more than his rent. Clean clothes that screamed money. But tears streaming down her face like her whole world was ending. The contrast hit him hard. She had everything. He had nothing. Yet somehow, they were both sitting on these cold steps, breaking apart. "Hey," Daniel said gently, his voice rough from not using it much lately. "You okay?" She looked at him with eyes that held too much sadness for someone so young. Big brown eyes swimming in tears. For a moment, she didn't speak, just stared like she was trying to figure out if he was safe. "I'm hungry," she finally whispered, her voice cracking. "And nobody cares." Those 4 words, "and nobody cares," hit Daniel like a freight train. He felt something break inside his chest. Here he was, a grown man who could handle his own suffering, who could go hungry, who could sleep in his car if he had to. But a child, a hungry child, that was different. That was wrong on every level. He didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't wonder where her parents were or why someone dressed that nicely could be starving. Didn't consider that this was his only meal or that his own daughter was waiting for him. He just acted. He split his sandwich in half and handed it to her. "Here," he said, extending the food toward her trembling hands. "Take it." The girl stared at the sandwich like it was made of gold, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "But it's yours." "I already ate." Daniel lied, his stomach growling loudly in protest, betraying him. "Go ahead, please." She took it with trembling hands and bit into it, like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Not the delicate bites of a rich kid, but desperate, hungry bites. Real hunger, the kind Daniel knew too well. Between bites, the story poured out of her. Her name was Sophie. Her mom was always working, always in meetings, always too busy, always promising next time and soon and, "I'm sorry, baby." Today was her birthday. 7 years old. Her mom had promised, really promised this time, to take her to lunch. They were supposed to go to that fancy place with the pasta she loved. Sophie had been so excited she'd barely slept. But then another meeting happened. An emergency call. A crisis that couldn't wait. Her mom had said, "Just wait here, 15 minutes tops." That was 3 hours ago. 3 hours. On her birthday. "She loves her company more than me," Sophie said, her voice hollow and empty in a way no child's voice should ever be. "I'm not important enough." Daniel felt rage building in his chest. Not at this child. Never at this child. But at whatever parent could do this to their own kid. What kind of person makes their 7-year-old daughter wait for 3 hours on her birthday? What kind of success is worth that? He thought of Keisha. How even when he had nothing, no job, no money, barely any food, he always made time, always showed up, because that's what mattered. Not the stuff he could buy, but the moments you showed up. "Listen to me," he said, turning to look Sophie dead in the eyes. "You are worth more than any meeting, any deal, any amount of money in the world. You hear me? Don't you ever forget that." Sophie's tears came harder then, but different. Not the tears of abandonment anymore. These were different. Like someone had finally said the words she'd been dying to hear. Like someone finally saw her. "I wish you were my dad," she whispered. Daniel felt his own eyes burning. His throat tightened. He pulled her into a hug, this stranger's child, and let her cry into his worn, threadbare jacket that smelled like cheap detergent and desperation. She wrapped her small arms around him and held on like she was drowning. "Your mom loves you," he said softly, even though he wasn't sure he believed it. Sometimes adults just forget what matters, but that doesn't mean you don't matter. That's when he heard the voice behind him. "Sophie." The word came out like a gasp, like someone had just been punched in the chest. He turned. A woman stood there, frozen on the sidewalk. Power suit that probably cost thousands. Hair perfect. Makeup flawless. Expensive watch catching the sunlight. Designer bag. The kind of presence that made the air itself feel expensive. Everything about her screamed power, success, control. But her face was shattered. She was staring at her daughter in Daniel's arms with an expression that could only be described as devastation. Complete and utter devastation. Like she was watching her whole world collapse in real time. "Mom." Sophie pulled away from Daniel, her voice small and cold. Distant. The woman's eyes moved from her daughter to the half sandwich in Sophie's hands. The cheap gas station sandwich. To Daniel's gaunt face, his hollow cheeks, his trembling hands. He watched her do the math. Watched the realization hit her like a freight train. A stranger had fed her daughter. Because she hadn't. A homeless-looking man in a worn jacket had done what she, with all her money, all her success, all her power, had failed to do. "How long have you been waiting, baby?" the woman asked, her voice cracking, barely holding it together. 3 hours and 17 minutes, Sophie said flatly. "I counted." The CEO closed her eyes like she'd been shot. When she opened them again, tears were streaming down her face, ruining that perfect makeup. She looked at Daniel, and he saw something unexpected there. Not anger at a strange man hugging her child, not suspicion, but gratitude and shame. Deep, overwhelming shame. And something else he couldn't name. "Thank you," she said to Daniel, her voice barely above a whisper. You just showed me what I've become." She knelt down right there on the sidewalk, ignoring the expensive suit hitting dirty concrete, and pulled her daughter close. "I'm so sorry, Sophie. I'm so sorry. I thought I was building a future for you, but I was missing your present. I was missing you, the actual you, right here, right now." Sophie didn't hug her back immediately. The hurt was too fresh. Daniel stood to leave, to give them privacy. This wasn't his moment. This was theirs to fix. "Wait," the CEO said, standing quickly. "Please, what's your name?" "Daniel." "Daniel, I'm Victoria Chun. I own the building you're sitting in front of." She paused, studying him with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "You just gave your last meal to my daughter, didn't you?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. His hollow cheeks, his shaking hands, the way he'd been carefully folding that sandwich wrapper to maybe save for later, all told the story. Victoria's jaw tightened. She pulled out her phone and made a call. "James, cancel the rest of my day. Cancel tomorrow, too. And Friday." She looked at her daughter, really looked at her. "Actually, cancel the whole week. Clear everything." Sophie's eyes went wide with shock. Victoria looked back at Daniel. "You're looking for work? How did you—" "The resume sticking out of your bag. The look on your face when I mentioned this building. The fact that you're sitting here at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday." She held out her hand. "I need a facilities director. Someone who understands what actually matters. Someone with real character. Salary starts at $75,000. Full benefits. Housing assistance. You start Monday." Daniel felt the world tilt. I don't understand. You gave away your last meal to a hungry child. You comforted a stranger's daughter when her own mother failed her." Victoria's voice was steel and silk. Most people wouldn't have even noticed her crying. They would have walked right past. That's not just kindness. That's character. That's integrity. That's exactly who I need around my daughter, around my company, around me. She glanced at Sophie, who was watching this entire exchange with wide eyes. Besides, Victoria said, her voice softened now, you just taught me the most valuable lesson of my entire career. And I don't take lessons lightly. If giving someone a job is the only way I can say thank you for saving my relationship with my daughter, then that's the easiest business decision I've ever made. 3 months later, Daniel would stand in his new apartment, a real apartment with heat and a working stove, watching Keisha play with Sophie. The two had become inseparable, best friends, sisters in everything but blood. Victoria had become not just his boss, but his friend, a woman who'd revolutionized her entire company culture around the principle that people mattered more than profit margins. She'd started leaving at 5 p.m., started having lunch with Sophie, started living instead of just working. But in that moment, on those concrete steps, all Daniel could do was shake Victoria's hand and try not to cry. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness doesn't just change a life. It changes everything. That's the power of seeing people. Really seeing them. One sandwich. One moment. One choice. Would you have stopped? Drop a comment below.